Making music was probably one of the earliest memories I have. My parents are both artists. We're both English professors at the university in my hometown. So it was a very artistic environment growing up. I studied many instruments. I think I started with violin. I was very little. And I took Suzuki lessons, and I had what's called I think a 3/4 or a 1/4. I don't know. I don't remember the size of the violins, but I've seen one recently, and it's these little miniature violins for children. There were cello lessons, choir, piano lessons. I started composing music pretty early. At one point, really wanted to be a singer-songwriter. Wrote my own songs and recorded them early on, and did that through college and into London. And at Middlebury, I studied composition, but because it's liberal arts, you study a lot of other things. So I took a lot of languages, Spanish, German, Italian, filmmaking, political science. And it was during my second week of school that I met David, my husband. I might have referred to him as David earlier. I can't remember. I didn't want to confuse anyone. But anyway, so David is from Cali, and we started dating my first semester, and we then moved to London after college, actually, because not for any reason other than the Defense of Marriage Act. So because David is foreign, and at the time the Defense of Marriage Act was in place, it meant that I couldn't sponsor his visa, even though at that time he had graduated and was working in Washington, D.C. For a consultancy there. There was no avenue for him to stay. And also what had happened under the Bush administration was that they had changed the visa system for foreigners who had studied in the United States, because I think previously to that change, you could stay on 2 years, and they then, under the Bush administration, introduced a lottery system. So many of our cohort had to relocate outside of the United States. So very privileged situation. His company gave him the option of London or Sao Paulo, and he chose London. And at that point, I was actually a finalist for a Fulbright to do a documentary film in Cali about gender identity in salsa. And I ultimately didn't win that grant and moved to London after I graduated. And London was a very unexpected chapter of my life, but so incredible. I became British. I really changed so much about the way I express myself. British culture, I think the culture shock that you go through as an American assimilating into British culture is very unnoticed at first, but unlike American culture, people do not like show-offs. They don't like loud, boastful people. They're a lot more soft-spoken, and that was such a shock, and ultimately really humbling. And I have so much gratitude for that time. And the artistic journey in London was one of exploring a lot of different kinds of music making. I recorded songs. I then went to Conservatoire at the Royal College of Music to study composition for film towards the end of my time in London. And at that time, David was doing a master's as well at the London School of Economics in the regulation of or the creation of legal drug markets was his focus. And so as I finished my master's, he was reorientating his career out of business consulting into drug policy reform in Colombia. And I was also very interested in that topic. So we embarked on that journey together of leaving London behind. We had both become British citizens, but that was 2016. Brexit happened. It seemed like an amazing time to get out of Europe, and I'm actually really glad that we did. things have since really started to swing very far to the right, and I hadn't realized how much I missed mountains and how much being outside and in nature and in these really exuberant spaces was a fundamental part of the creative childhood that I'd had, and that I had really lost that living in a flat city, which is London. and yeah, 6 years ago, we moved to Cali, and I had a great situation. The first a year and a half about, we spent that time exploring, spending our savings. Not sure we were making the wisest adult decisions, but we were still young, and we started these projects. He working in drug policy reform at the University of the Andes, which is a important university in Bogota. And I started working in Colombian film, scoring shorts and 2 features. But the artistic experience in Cali has been unparalleled. I can't really think of another time in my life where I've had so much creative inspiration. There are so many cultures present here, and if you're adventurous, you have the opportunity to connect with people who are so unexpected in their eccentricity. And this has been a process over the last 6 years, because also very little English is spoken here. So if you are going to participate in the society at all levels, from to connect, you have to learn Spanish. And if you want to have a really vibrant social life, your Spanish has to be really, really good. And I had started studying Spanish at 12, had done 2 exchanges in Spain, but 10 years in London had left it very rusty. And when I arrived in Cali, I was in for quite a shock, because I did not have, I had very academic Spanish. I was a huge perfectionist, so I never let myself flow. And what I've had to learn in Cali is how to improvise. And I would say that the biggest artistic gift that Cali and all of its facets has given me has been that ability to improvise and to create with what is around you, instead of in the kinds of optimal conditions that we're always accustomizing ourselves to in London.